Welcome to the Microgreens Mastery Podcast. I'm your host, Jonah Krochmalnek. Together, we'll explore the art of turning tiny seeds into a thriving microgreens empire, sharing insights, coveted secrets, and strategic wisdom from building one of Canada's largest microgreens farms. Stay tuned for thought-provoking conversations with leading figures in the world of microgreens. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. On today's episode, we have Aaron Varati from High Mowing Organic Seeds. On this episode, we're doing a deep dive on everything seed related. We're going to be talking about the importance of seed quality and how high mowing takes the guesswork out for growers in providing consistent quality and supply in seed, the optimal conditions to store seed, and a really great resource for both outdoor and indoor farmers on production issues. I learned a lot from this episode, and I hope you do as well. Let's get right into it. Hey, Aaron, welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you and hear more about High Mowing Organic Seeds. And thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for asking me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I'd love to hear how you first got interested in farming and some of the backstory behind High Mowing Organic Seeds.
Yeah, well, I did not grow up farming. In college, I toyed around with the idea of a couple different professions, but realized I wanted to do something where I would never question, like, is this really worth it? Does the world need this? Is this worth my time? And, food is quite important to one's survival.
Yeah.
And it's really fun. It's challenging in different ways. It's outside. So yeah, I started in college and have been working in ag ever since. High mowing, this is our 29th season.
Wow.
Started by a man named Tom Stearns in his big garden and a garage, and just kind of slowly grew into the company we are today, selling seeds all over the continent.
Wow.
And really, I believe he started because, Tom wanted to make a positive impact in the world. He saw there was a lot of work to do and do it through agriculture, much like me. And also with the belief that organic farming should be founded on organic seeds. So, our mission, my mission in my farming career and High Mowing's mission is just to get as much organic seed out into the fields of organic farmers as we can.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people don't realize that even if you are an organic farm, you're not necessarily required to use organic seed if you can't find the variety or something like that. So the more organic seed that's available, the more people can actually grow organic seed. And there's so many benefits to that for the land, for the actual quality of the seed. I'm excited to dive into that with you. I'd love to hear more about kind of your farming background. I remember I looked up before the podcast that you had your own farm. You worked as a farm manager. I'd love to hear more about your experience with that.
Yeah. So I started a market farm after some apprenticeships after college, doing a lot of the same stuff that a lot of the farmers I work with now are doing. Mixed fresh vegetables for farmers markets, CSA, direct to retail, and some seed crops as well. More and more seed crops as the years went on. Had my own farm down in Olympia, Washington, for about 5 years, and then spent the next 4 or so years managing a farmer training program up on Whidbey Island in Washington State.
Yeah.
The Organic Farm School, which already had a pretty strong seed saving component. And so, yeah, spent 4 years trying to teach folks the ins and outs of farming. And yeah, like I said, seeds were always my passion since college. I was fortunate enough to have Dr. John Navazio as my professor, who, for those of you who know, he's one of the foremost organic vegetable breeders on the continent. And so he kind of kindled that passion in me then. And yeah, over the years, just more and more seed work. And then the opportunity to work at High Mowing came up, and it was the right time. And I went for it, and I'm glad I did.
Awesome. So how long have you been with High Mowing?
Yeah, I've been on the payroll a little over 3 years, but I've worked with High Mowing for a decade or more, growing seeds on contract for them, in addition to a bunch of other companies. I had a pretty decent idea of like what the mission and operation of the company was before like officially coming on board as an employee.
Yeah, no, for sure. That what a great way to transition. Like you're selling the seed company seeds, and then now you're representing the seed company. So like it's like a full circle of understanding the production cycle, which makes it probably a much easier job for you to help out farmers when they're having issues, and try to dial in if the seeds are the issues or something else. So on a kind of daily or weekly basis, what is your role at High Mowing?
Yeah, well, you kind of previewed it there. I do. So my primary role is commercial grower sales representative. So I'm working with farmers all over Canada and California. That's the ground I cover. Helping them, like making variety recommendations, shipping questions and logistics. A lot of it, and one of my favorite parts of the job is technical assistance. Folks call in with issues they're having, whether it's like disease or pests or cultural practices, crop planning, and talking the nuances of that and trying to help them figure that out. As much as we can act like an extension service from universities down here in the States, we try. We're here to help with whatever we can. I've farmed in the past. All my colleagues have farmed at some point in their lives. We've got a pretty big collective knowledge base. So yeah, that's the one part. And then the other part of my job is organizing the contract seed productions of folks who are growing some of the seeds that we're then selling. So yeah, my previous experience growing seeds for companies is proving pretty useful in this role too.
Yeah.
So, and right now I'm pretty busy with that. People are sending in their germination samples, and we're talking, cleaning recommendations, and when to ship the final lots and all that. So, yeah, those are my two main roles here.
Okay, so I guess you kind of have two busy seasons then. You have the spring, which is when a lot of people buy seed, but then you have probably the fall, which is when a lot of seed is being harvested, is being checked on what seeds you're going to buy, what the quality is, kind of working with the farms, like you said. So I just assumed in my head that it was just one busy season, which is the spring, but it sounds like there's this time of year is also quite busy for you.
Yeah, and they kind of overlap. And it's taken me a few years to get used to the inverse of the seasonal workload, because in farming, it's pretty chill in the winter for the most part, and then in the summer it really ramps up. But the seed business is kind of the inverse, where the busy season starts pretty much now, and primarily in the contracting stuff at the moment, like pretty busy organizing the incoming crops. But then the contracting cycle starts up again in December, where we start to figure out what we need and how much for next season too. So that's coinciding with the busy sales season. And then, both of them kind of taper off in the summer. So it is nice to have relatively leisurely summers, I will say. There's a lot of things I miss about farming, but it's nice to have a reprieve from a jam-packed summer.
Yeah, for sure. It's nice to just have the seasonality, so that whether it's like, for me, I would prefer personally summer, because that's when the weather's the best and you can be outside the most. And I'd rather work in the winter. But that might just be my personal preference. But with microgreens in particular, there is some seasonality, but definitely not as much as field farming. So I'm curious on how many different farms you source seed from, because it sounds like you have quite a few different contracts going. And then where that seed mostly comes from.
Yeah, we've got two primary channels that we acquire seed through. One are from vendors, and the other would be from contracts. So from vendors, those are sometimes individuals, sometimes companies that either breed and or produce the seed crops. And then they essentially have like their own catalog that they distribute. So I'd say about 2/3 of the varieties we offer, we just buy off the shelf, as we say, from those breeder producer companies. And then the other third is the crops that we contract from farmers around the continent, most of them in the western part of the continent, just because of the reliably dry summers for a lot of the dry seeded crops. But we've got some Midwest and a Canadian producer or two.
That's great. Yeah, the weather out west is just, that's so much more consistent in the summer. you just know it's not gonna rain for quite a long period of time. So obviously I can imagine harvesting wet seed is just got to be very difficult for seed farmers. I know High Mowing does some breeding and or seed cultivation in Vermont. Is that specific to breeding, or is there actual also like seed being sold from those programs, like being grown in Vermont and then sold from being grown there?
Yeah, we used to do both breeding and seed production in Vermont, but strategically we kind of pared down to just focus on our primary mission, like contract and distribute seeds well, like kind of narrow our focus so that we can get really good at doing that. So yeah, we've got a few varieties that did come from our breeding program in the past that are still quite productive for folks. I don't think any of them are offered as microgreens.
Yeah, no, because the way I actually found out about high mowing is I didn't start as a microgreens farmer. I started as a field farmer for about a year and a half, just very small scale, like very hobby level, just trying to learn at an urban farm in Toronto. And the farm manager at the time was like, high mowing, they have really good quality seed. And same thing with the guy below him. He was like the day-to-day farmer. And then all my experiences have been fantastic with the quality. I don't think I even remember once out of, we at Living Earth, we bought a lot of seed over the years, ever having an issue with high mowing seeds, which is so important for microgreens, but even for field farming, because, you plant a carrot and you're expecting a certain vigor in the seed growth, and it doesn't meet those expectations. The weather can really have a big impact on, like, it can exacerbate weather issues because the plant can't get a good start because it doesn't have the energy in the seed. So for microgreens in particular, but even for field farming, like the quality of seed is so important. And I think often in the microgreens industry, it's not like people are always trying to find, how can I save money on seed and buy the least expensive seed. But what I've learned is the least expensive seed is the least expensive for a reason, and you're probably going to have more issues than solutions by saving a relatively small amount of your annual budget on production, and it'll cost a lot more than it saves. That's what I learned, and that's why I love what you guys are doing, and the quality of the seed is so important.
Yeah, thanks for saying so. I'm happy to hear it.
Yeah, no,
We
it's great.
Yeah, another part of what I do though, we do the best we can, but we're not perfect. So when things do go sideways for whatever reason, whether it's a seed quality issue, purity, whatever, I encourage folks, like, contact us immediately with what's going on, because the sooner we know about it, the sooner we might be able to help remedy the situation.
Yeah,
And I mean, that's how we find out about a lot of the suboptimal issues out there, is from growers. And when people let us know about funky stuff that's going on their farms, it then enables us to fix those problems and make our system even stronger, which then benefits everybody down the line too. So yeah, we try to do a really good job, but we recognize that we can do a better job with the help of all the folks growing our seeds. So, like, it is a system, and we're all kind of in it together in a way. So
yeah, that's great. Yeah,
yeah,
no, that makes perfect sense. Maybe my opinion has been skewed because we don't grow 50 different varieties of microgreens. But yeah, it's good to know for farms that ever do have issues, that it's best to reach out, because I like your customer service is great. So I know that if a customer had seed that was suboptimal, you guys would make sure that that's taken care of. Where in my experience, other seed companies I've had in the past, they didn't really think it was the seed, or and it became difficult to deal with some seed companies. But my experience with you guys has been, it's always been super easy.
good
So
to
yeah,
hear.
that's great that you guys want to learn too what's not working and make sure to fix that, and then that makes it better for everyone. So because it realistically, if one farmer has a problem, probably other farmers have the problem too. So giving that information back to you guys allows less issues to come up in the future, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many factors in farming. Like it's hard to isolate like what the culprit is in any challenge, but I mean that's part of what we do here too. Like we'll talk through all the factors, like how do you seed them, like what's the humidity like, all the ins and outs. So, and that's a really fun part of the job too, and hopefully it's
Yeah.
helping folks.
Yeah. I love how much you're enjoying the work you're doing, because I think that's so important. And I can tell you found your passion with this, and it's just great to have people like you on farmer sides to diagnose problems and take the many years of experience you've had farming and seed cultivation and bring that to other farms. In terms of, so microgreens is, I think it seems to be a part of your business, but obviously it's not the whole part. So how would kind of your customer breakdown between gardeners and farmers look like, and then between field crops and then microgreen seeds, as I don't know, maybe percentages or something along those lines?
Yeah. Yeah. Commercial growers, AKA farmers, they're about 60% of our total sales. And those are folks who identify like on their web account as commercial growers. So they're about 60. Home gardeners are probably about 30. And that either goes through website sales and our seed rack program, because we've got quite a few seed racks across the continent, like in garden centers and co-ops and such. And then the rest we probably sell to other seed companies. And yeah, it's a good point to make. Like the organic seed world is a pretty friendly place. Like we're all trying to do the same thing, which sometimes can seem like competition, but I've really found it's not. Like we're selling and buying seeds from other companies. They're doing the same, sharing genetics. So it's a pretty collaborative spirit most companies have. But yeah, another like 10 to 15% of our sales probably go to other seed companies. And then, yeah, in terms of like microgreen sales as a percentage of that commercial grower sales, I would venture anywhere from like 7 to 10%, maybe. I've not had time to crunch the numbers on that.
Mm-hmm.
But I would guess it's in that range, at least by total sales. Like the amount of customers might not be that high, but as you and a lot of your listeners probably know, microgreen growers go through a disproportionate amount of seed compared to
Yeah.
row crop farmers. So yeah, that'd be my guess.
For sure. Yeah, that makes sense. So have you found that the microgreens segment has kind of grown for you guys? Because originally, like when I started buying seeds from you, which was 2012, I believe, there wasn't a whole lot of variety in the microgreens you did offer. And in the last, especially the last couple of years, there's been what seemed, from what I can see, a much bigger variety and a much more competitive price landscape for the organic microgreen seeds that you guys offer. Has that been like a strategy that you guys have taken, or is it just kind of come naturally?
I think it's both. Like we notice there's a big demand for more varieties of microgreens, and not just more varieties, but a more consistent supply. So I did count in our 2024 catalog, we offer 29 varieties of microgreens. And so, yeah, the amount of varieties we're offering is slowly increasing. And I think at least for the regions that I cover, the amount of customers and seed going out to folks is increasing as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then what would you say are the more popular out of those 29? Obviously, there's a few that are new that wouldn't have much information on yet, but out of the ones that you did sell in the last few years, what would you say are the most popular varieties that you sell from microgreens growers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of arugula microgreens, red Russian kale, broccoli is a pretty big seller. And then we've got a few mixes that sell pretty well in addition. Our spicy mix is a mix of mustards and Asian greens. Prism mix is a like very colorful blend of different mustards and Asian greens of various colors. And then our mild mix does pretty well also. It's kind of the milder flavored, tatsois, bok choys, mizunas, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, and they're really beautiful. The different mixes. If anyone goes to High Mowing's website, you can see pictures of the mixes. They've done a really good job of selecting varieties that really pair well together in terms of speed of growth, but also coloring. So if anyone interested in buying a pre-mixed microgreen seed that will have uniform growth, yeah, those three options are fantastic. Because I've seen where like we created our own mixes, and just because we wanted to find things that would grow as fast as possible. But I see a lot of mixes being sold that have things that are just not in a like the time of growth is not well aligned, and then it just becomes like you have like these really short crops with tall crops, and it just becomes difficult to manage the height of the stems and the yield and that sort of thing. So the mixes you have are great for that because they're kind of like plug and play. You just throw the seed down and you'll get a uniform crop with those mixes, which is great.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we do. Whenever we make a new mix, or sometimes we'll have to substitute one variety for another because it's not available in the mix, and we do trial everything like in the mix to make sure, that growth rate is even, because it's important.
Yeah, it's super important. It's hard to realize until you actually grow an even crop how important that is. For example, if you're using like a mechanical harvester, it's almost like you're cutting two crops in one, and then it gets very difficult to have a really nice looking even product because it'll just look like a subpar quality microgreen instead of what most growers should be after, which is something that's very uniform, good leaf size, relatively even between the different crops in the mix. So I'd love to get into more of the production of the seeds, and kind of get your take on a few things. So what do you think are the key factors to consider when choosing what seeds to sell for microgreen varieties?
From the seed company perspective,
Yeah.
we have placed primary importance on a consistent, reliable, high quality supply. Because there have been some varieties a little more obscure that we thought, it could be cool to add. People might like it, but we aren't certain of a longer term supply. And so, like, that's one of the main things we look at, because we really don't want folks to, find this variety that really works for them. They get it dialed in their system. They love it and rely on it for, a year or more, and then it's just gone and they have to find something new. And it seems like there can be a big difference between varieties and how they perform in a microgreen setting. And so, that's really the main thing. Like, is it high quality? Can we bring in enough of it to get the price to a point where it is lucrative for microgreen growers to grow? But can we also sell through it fast enough so that we can preserve the quality? Because we don't want, as with microgreen growers or farmers of all types, you might be able to get a good deal on some seed, but if it's going to take you 7 years to go through it, you're not going to be utilizing the full value of that.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a really great point. I think from my perspective, I as a grower, I don't often think about like the supply side of like, because you're right, you really don't want to learn to grow a specific variety, get demand for it, and then all of a sudden you can't get the seed because it was a limited supply or something that you were able to get once, or and just not be able to grow it again, because it's work, right? It's a whole process to create a new product. And then there's even things like from the grower perspective, like creating a retail label that can be quite expensive, to get the whole labeling, press, manufacturing done with your label supplier, just to have the product not be available. And this happened to us early on. It was a lesson learned, that there was a variety that we could get organic, and then we couldn't sell the product as organic anymore because we couldn't get the seeds. I think that's important to be able to have that consistent supply along with obviously the quality. So that's a great point that as a grower I don't often think about, but it's very important to consider when with what seed company you buy from, but also what seeds you're buying if it's something that will be available. So in terms of quality, what do you think, like what makes a seed viable or of high quality to sell at High Mowing in terms of germination rate and any other factors that would go into the decision to carry a specific lot of seed?
Yeah, I mean, the first is it has to be certified organic. Everything we sell is certified organic. The other standards we have, it's got to be 99.5% pure, meaning 99.5% seeds. Usually it's less. I mean, less than 0.5% of other stuff. And then, yeah, it's got to meet our germination requirements. We have an in-house germination and quality control lab that we do most of our tests in. We do utilize outside labs for certain testing techniques when we need to. But yeah, we germ test everything in our lab. There's a federal minimum, and it's crop specific, but our minimums are generally 5 to 10 points higher than that. And it's very rare where we will go below our minimum. It'll still meet the federal minimum. But if we decide like we would rather have growers have access to this variety at a slightly lower germ rate than our standards, we'll do that.
What is the range of the federal germination minimums? Because I guess it's different for different crops.
Varies by crop. So like some flowers are 60, 70%.
Wow.
Most things aren't any higher than 80 at the federal level.
Yeah. Wow. So then yours is generally like minimums are like 85, 90, that like for different crops generally?
Yeah. So brassicas, we really try for 85 or 90. Some of the like chenopodes like chard, 85 is what we go for, I think, whereas 70 is the federal minimum.
But a lot of the time the seed like that's the minimum. So most of the time from what I've seen, it's like, 95, 98, like for especially things like brassicas, there's certain crops I find that are just really strong germinators, and there's not a lot of hard seed, which for those that don't know, hard seed is seed that won't germinate. It's still viable, but it just won't germinate on the first round of environmental conditions that would be suitable to grow. And it's just a survival mechanism for the seeds to not be wiped out if there was some sort of environmental event like a really late frost or something like that the genetics get passed on. So do you find hard seed is a common issue with germination when you're getting seed lots?
Not with microgreens. There's some flowers that are quite finicky in that way, and sometimes Beta vulgaris species like beets and chard will have some dormancy issues, but much less so.
Interesting.
So we germ test everything, but there's also like a deadline for that germination too. Like for example, I think arugula will seed the test and we count it after, I believe it's 7 days. So like there may be seeds that are germinating day 8, day 10, but we don't count them because we, want things to germinate vigorously.
Exactly. Yeah. I guess that time frame on when you check it would be different depending on the speed of that seed's germination.
Totally. Yeah. So like most brassicas are probably in the like 7 to 9 day range. Chards are probably more in like the 10 to 12. Because different species germinate at different rates.
Yeah, and then in terms of temperature, is it when you do that kind of testing, is it different for different crops? Do you set the temperature at what is ideal for that crop, or do you put it under conditions that would be less than ideal to see what happens?
I believe they germinate, with rare exceptions, everything at the same temperature. Like they've got a little germ chamber that they sit to be quite cozy at about 70 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, which is for microgreens production is sometimes on the low end, but I know for, field production, when you're putting stuff out, when it's, the soil is 55, 60, that's a whole different story. But with microgreens, it's so consistent that you're usually germinating at the ideal temperatures,
Yeah.
which, somewhere between 70 and 80. One thing I've personally noticed with microgreens, specifically sunflower, is the outdoor growing conditions have a really strong impact on the germination rate, vigor, seed hull coming, like the seed hulls coming off. So I wonder what your experience is with like environmental factors as the seeds are being produced in the field, and how that relates to um, the quality of the seed coming out in your germination tests and things like that. Is there some sort of correlation between the two?
I imagine there would be, yes. And the sunflower shoots do seem to be more variable lot to lot, which is why when we find a lot that works for us and we hear from growers works well for them, we try to get as much as we can of it. Because, yeah, like you say, like the shells coming off can be a problem. For the sunflower specifically, that is something we buy from a vendor. And we don't have any relationship with the person actually growing the seed in the field. So I couldn't speak to that specifically. But some of the crops we offer as microgreens do come on contract. And yeah, if we're seeing something a little unusual or suspicious in the QC stage, we can reach out to the grower and see, like some of these seeds, like they're not germinating or they're kind of slow, and maybe it rained like a couple weeks before harvest, and like maybe that was somewhat detrimental to them. I mean, yeah, the seeds are only going to be as strong as the growing conditions were favorable
Yeah,
in the reproductive stage.
for sure. Yeah, I learned this lesson the hard way very early in my gardening career. I pretty much I didn't know anything at that time. I was just a teenager. I grew tomatoes in the same soil with very little amendments for 7 years. The first 4 or 5 years, totally fine. There was enough reserve in the soil. The soil in Southern Ontario is generally quite good. It's like a nice light clay soil generally, and lots of nutrition in it. But by year 6 and 7, I remember the tomatoes were smaller, and the seeds that I saved just didn't grow very well. And it was just a very interesting phenomenon to learn for the first time, is like how important the soil and the environmental conditions are for the actual seed that's being grown. And it's something that, as a microgreen grower, you're disconnected from where the seeds are grown and harvested, and the soil it's grown in. And I just thought it was very fascinating to see that actually happen in real life, and see how important the soil quality is for. And I remember that year the tomatoes also had more disease pressure. And this was just a garden, not commercial production. But just very fascinating to see that play out in real life, and watch it happen. And it was a something that was important, I think, for me to learn about how plants will adapt to the environment and not be able to produce the same size of seed or the quality of seed without having the nutrients in the soil to uptake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, growing good seed is in a lot of ways the same as growing good vegetable crops, like crop rotation concerns, fertility management, disease mitigation. Yeah, it's all, yeah, there's a lot of parallels. And yeah, the quality of the crop correlates to the quality of the management, really.
Yeah, for sure. For those growers that are maybe not as experienced, what would be the shelf life if stored, just at room temperature, for different varieties of seeds you sell as microgreens?
Well, that depends on where your shelf is. Under optimal conditions, I mean, brassicas can store anywhere from like 8 to 10 years.
Wow.
Peas might be a little less, but not that much. Lettuces would be a little less. Herbs probably less. But they can last a long time. I mean, I grew a kale on contract. The stock seed, it wasn't germinating high, but it was from 1994. and
Wow.
that was in 2019.
Wow. That's
Um,
crazy.
so yeah, storage conditions are important, and that's something that, like whenever someone's having an issue, whether it's with microgreen seeds or any seed, I ask them like, how have they been stored? Because the ideal conditions are 40% humidity, dark, and like around 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 4 degrees Celsius if you can. And so if seeds are stored like that, yeah, they can last quite a long time. For
Interesting.
commercial production purposes, that might not be feasible.
Yeah.
If you had to prioritize a couple over others, I would say dark is important, but the humidity is probably more important than the temperature. Like seeds can be, ambient room temperature, and dry a lot easier than they can be cold and damp. Like the
Interesting.
humidity seems to be like, of those three factors, humidity I think is the most important for seed longevity.
That's good to know. Yeah, I would have always just assumed as temperature because, um, like I've heard, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that people say like, oh, if you put your seeds in the freezer, they'll last indefinitely. But I don't know if the moisture in a freezer would affect that at that low temperature. I'm just curious on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I've always been slightly nervous to freeze seed, because when you take it out of the freezer, depending on what kind of container you have it in, the condensation can develop on the
Mm,
container and then contribute to some seed loss. But yeah, from what all the experts say, like 40 and 40, if your humidity and your temperature add up to less than 100, you're looking pretty good. So
okay.
so like the bulk storage room we recently built, in the warehouse in Vermont, it is constantly kept at 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 40% humidity, and that has enabled us to bring in a lot more of a certain crop at a time, and have a secure supply and be assured that we can store it to high quality for several years. And that's
Yeah.
really been a really positive development in the last couple of years, especially
No.
with all the um, shortages that there were a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I was just about to ask about that because luckily we at Living Earth we had a lot of supply chain issues, but seed generally was okay during the pandemic. So I was just going to ask you what your experience was with that. So it sounds like there was supply chain issues with seed as well.
Yeah, and it wasn't so much that there wasn't seed in the world that we wanted. It was just hard for it to get to us.
Mm,
Um, yeah, one spinach variety got stuck in a shipping container for, like, it was basically lost for half a year,
wow.
and then it finally showed up. There were some volume issues too, though. Like I feel like vendors were kind of rationing what they would sell to folks just to make sure like everyone was taken care of to the best of their ability.
Yeah.
Um, and this would, I mean, I think this large long term storage facility was planned before the pandemic as well. But it really came in useful. Like because if there was more than we would typically buy available, when we were able to, we would get it because we knew we could keep it high quality and then just have it. And then in some cases, be able to sell it to other seed companies as well.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah. I love the idea of the collaboration. When I started the farm, I was very competition focused. And then as I got more experience in business, I realized what you learn in school, I went to business school, what you learn in school and what is reality is very different. And I feel that collaboration is almost always going to benefit both parties. Whereas if you view, other seed companies or in my case, other farms as competition, then it becomes very difficult to see the world accurately. And, it just in my experience, like collaboration is just such a great thing. Like the best thing is just create win-win situations. So if you guys can get more seed from the vendors and be able to supply other seed companies that are struggling to get seed, it's getting more organic seed out there, like you said, which is your guys' mission, and I totally believe in that. And I think I'm the same way, or I've become the same way, which is part of what I'm doing with Microgreens Consulting, is just getting more accurate, valuable information out there for people to make better decisions, to be able to grow more healthy nutritious food for their communities. So I think it's just such an important aspect of a mindset shift that I feel the longer people are in business, the more that comes to fruition, it seems like. So in terms of seed certification and testing, everything has to be certified organic. So that's pretty clear cut. But in terms of like sending seed to international countries, like I know you sent to Canada because obviously we bought from you guys. So you have to get certain certifications. Do you sell seed elsewhere, and do you, other than just Canada? And do you have, is it very time consuming to deal with the importation certificates that are needed for other countries?
Yeah, so I work with farmers in Canada, and to get seed over there isn't too onerous. There's a couple hoops we sometimes have to jump through. The biggest restriction is on volume going into Canada. So for small seeded crops, which is anything smaller than a radish, roughly, the customs regulation is we can ship up to 1 pound of one lot without any additional certification. If we want to send multiple pounds, we need, I think, what is generally called a blue certificate, just because the piece of paper is blue. It's by like an internationally recognized lab that is screening for germination, but I believe the primary concern is for noxious weeds. And most, if not all, of our microgreen varieties do have a blue certificate. And so, yeah, like if someone in Ontario orders 5 pounds of arugula microgreens, we can do that. They do cost $10. We charge $10 for the certificate because there is the labor and the cost of the test that we need to recoup. But then for larger seeded crops like your sunflower shoots, your peas, we can send up to 10 pounds at a time without a certificate. Anything above 10 pounds, we can send with a certificate. Those are, Canada's the only other country we export like finished goods to, like seeds for planting. We have sold seed companies in Europe once or twice. And that is quite a bit more rigorous of a process, I believe, but it's not something that I deal with, luckily.
And then in terms of checking for any sort of disease or pests on the seed, is that part of the process of quality control? Is kind of checking if there's any sort of pest or disease on the seed?
Yeah, definitely. So for some crops, like peas are a good example in the microgreen realm. Pea weevils are omnipresent out there. So we'll do a visual inspection upon receiving the lot just to see what the level is. But at this point, our standard operating procedure is to freeze the pea seed for, I believe it's 28 days at a specified temperature, which I want to say it's 18 degrees Fahrenheit, but I'm not sure.
Interesting.
Anyway, there's a strict protocol for what we do. So we freeze it for cold enough for long enough where it kills the pea weevils. So the damaged seeds may still be in there, but the weevils are dead. And any seeds they affected, that's reflected in the germination rate.
Mm-hmm.
For all of our brassicas, we test everything for blackleg and black rot. Blackleg is Phoma lingam. If you're into binomials, black rot Xanthomonas campestris. Because especially out here in Northwest U.S., those two diseases are bad news because there's so much brassica seed production out here. So we are very careful about making sure we're not spreading that disease. And then lettuce mosaic virus as well for most of the lettuces we're testing for. Yeah.
I know recently, last 5 years or maybe even the 10 years, that there's that downy mildew on basil that's just kind of just taken over. Is there any point to test for that? Because it kind of spreads in the air. So is it usually come from seed, or is it more just it's somewhere else on another type of plant and then it comes in during the growing season? Do you know much about that?
Yeah, I believe it's environmental. And I think there is some debate whether downy mildew can be seed-borne on spinach. But as far as I know for basil, it's in the air. or the soil, or it's just out in the environment. There's downy mildew resistant basils out there. We don't offer them as microgreens, and I know um, as the mildew evolves, it's becoming resistant. Um, is able to evade some of these resistances on some of these varieties. So
Wow.
it's like it's an arms race, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Wow.
Um,
That's crazy. Yeah.
but for the most part, downy mildew is environmental. So I mean, sanitizing your equipment is probably the best precaution against that, I would say.
Yeah. It doesn't generally for microgreens, it's generally not, as far as I've seen, it's not an issue.
Okay,
It must take longer than the cycle that you grow it at.
sure.
Or maybe that's just my experience. I haven't heard any of that, but I just know for basil, I remember when I had that farm plot when I started my career, it was crazy how fast it spread. It was like it was like the
Mhm.
pandemic, but of a basil virus. It was just nuts, and I've never seen a plant disease take over like that. And it's crazy because it's on the underside of the leaf, so you don't really notice it unless you look under the leaf.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah,
Surprise.
if anyone's ever seen like kind of black, gray, fuzzy, like I don't even know if you call it like mold looking, but kind of mold looking under your leaf, you probably have it. It's very common, and I guess probably more in the eastern U.S. I would guess just from the humidity than the western, but I don't actually know that.
Yeah, no, we get it out here too on the West
Okay.
Coast. It's just a matter of time. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. In terms of you being a commercial grower sales rep, what would you say your favorite part of your job is on a you know weekly or monthly basis?
Yeah, it's not quite monthly, but I really enjoy going around and visiting farms. That is part of my job, doing farm visits. I usually make one big trip a year and then a few side trips. I love seeing the different landscapes, the different farms, how they're set up, like what their environment's like, what their markets are, their successes, their challenges, and just getting to know them better. Like you can only get to know someone so good over phone calls and emails.
Yeah.
Um, so that's my favorite part of the job. Yeah, I was actually just up in BC last week for a conference, but spent a day going around the Kootenays,
Oh, nice.
visiting farms, and it reminded me how much I love that part of my job.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I was in Boston recently and visited a couple of microgreens farms, and it got me thinking. Like I want to go visit more farms because it's really fun and you learn a lot and you form those relationships with other farmers and feel like there's a strong camaraderie between farmers. Like it's something that if you've never farmed commercially, you don't understand the struggles of it the same way. And it's just nice to have more community around farmers. I think it's just beautiful and it's just great to have that community. Um, what would you say is the most challenging part of your job?
I was reminded of this last week as well. They're both great parts of my job, but in the winter, when I am at conferences a fair amount of the time, and it is also the busy season in terms of sales, it's a heavy volume of work.
Yeah,
And again, it's all good. I can spend a day at a conference meeting folks and talking about the things we love. But then I get back to the hotel and I still have to respond to emails.
yeah, yeah. That's
So it's not that bad. I mean, my job is pretty sweet. I'm a lucky person, but I mean, if that's the worst I've got it, then that's pretty good. I'd say.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And like just getting to help farms along their journey, I think is it must be very rewarding. It is for me, and I can imagine with your experience, like someone that's new to market gardening, your expertise would just be phenomenal to be able to help someone with some of the struggles that you have early on in your farming journey, especially if you're in a more remote area that you don't know a lot of other farmers in the area yet. Someone like you would be a phenomenal resource to chat with and try to learn from and problem solve with.
Yeah, I try to be, and that's another part of the job I really do like, and it shares a lot of similarities with when I was managing that farmer training program. I feel like I can be most useful to those folks just starting out and like trying to get their feet under them and figure out how to approach this passion of theirs. Again, just a plug. If you ever got any questions about anything, please reach out.
Yeah, and we'll maybe I'll include I can include your email in the show notes if anyone wants to reach out. But you can also call High Mowing as well and get a hold of Aaron or any of the well experienced sales reps there. If you can go back in time to a few years ago when you started working at High Mowing and meet that younger version of yourself, what advice would you give them to set them up for success in the coming years, in the following years to come?
Yeah. I think it would be, you don't have to know everything now. When I started this job and would get questions from folks that I didn't know the answer to, I felt kind of bad. Like I wasn't doing this job I'm supposed to do. They called me looking for advice and I didn't know. But in the vast majority of cases, they can wait a day or two. So, what I'll do is kind of ask some follow-up questions, try to understand the context of their problem as much as I can, and then do some research that they might not have time to do in the busy farming season. So whether it's my own research or, my colleagues, I rely a lot on them for information on a lot of different problems that farmers are having. And, it enables me to learn stuff I didn't know before. And, get back to the farmer in a few days with, sometimes it's more follow-up questions, or sometimes it's, theory, and sometimes it's just a straight up answer. Like, I think this is it. It's learning's a process. You can't know everything right now, and that's fine.
Yeah, for sure. And in my experience, the best way to learn is to do. So, just getting out there and growing and learning along the way. And then you have that experience. And then the next time something happens, whether it's a crop failure or some sort of, soil issue or whatever it may be, you're better prepared. And if you just read and education is phenomenal, but I think combining education with actually doing whatever it is that you're trying to learn, the combination of those two is I think quite powerful. So even whether it's starting a new job or starting a farm, just get out there and start growing and you'll learn so much. That's how I started farming. It was I just had a passion, and I think a lot of people go that route as well. They don't necessarily have a full education in farming, especially now where it's it's something that the resources are available online to learn the basics and get started. So if listeners want to connect with you or learn more about High Mowing, where can they find you or High Mowing online and on social media?
Yeah, our website is highmowingseeds.com. And I'm not sure I can give my phone number. Is that okay?
Yeah, if you want to, for sure.
You can reach me via phone at 866-735-4454, extension 165, or just dial the number you see on our website and ask for me. And then I do dabble in the Instagram now and then. And that is Aaron_Varati.
Awesome. This has been a really insightful episode. I think I learned a lot, and I'm sure the listeners will appreciate the perspective from an organic seed company and all your years of experience. So thank you for coming on and sharing all the lessons you learned and all the information that you shared with everyone today. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was my pleasure. There's few things in the world I like more than talking about seeds. So it was a pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to the Microgreens Mastery Podcast. To access a wealth of insights, just click the subscribe button, stay notified about each new episode, and enjoy all of this wisdom for free. If you're ready to supercharge your microgreens business, visit microgreensconsulting.com for a gold mine of guides and resources. We've transformed thousands of microgreens businesses, and you're invited to join the success story. Let's stay connected. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at Microgreens Consulting for exclusive content and expert tips and wisdom. If you found this episode insightful, please leave us a review, spread the word, and let's share microgreens magic with the world. Until next time, let curiosity fuel your growth and may happiness be your harvest. Happy growing, everyone.